Okay, so you want to make sure that negative is distributed to both of them. Okay. Any questions on that step? Okay. Okay, so now we can actually just combine those two. So you have x squared, 10x minus 4x is 6x plus 9 over x plus 3. Okay. Now with this one, you can actually factor it. X squared plus 6x plus 9 equals x plus 3 times x plus 3. Okay, so you have x plus 3 times x plus 3. If you want, you can make that 1 times x plus 3. You don't have to, but you can. So now you have the x plus 3 and the x plus 3 that will cancel each other out. Okay, so you're left with x plus 3 over 1, or just x plus 3. All right. So any questions on that one? So whenever you get to an answer like this, you always want to see if you can factor it out to cancel out the denominator in some way, because most of the time you can cancel it out. Not all the time, but most of the time. All right. Let's do one more with the like denominators. Okay, so what if you wanted to subtract x squared over x plus 7, x plus 8, minus negative x squared plus 14x over x plus 7 times x plus 8. Okay, so let me just go ahead and rewrite that. X squared over x plus 7 times x plus 8 minus negative x squared plus 14x over x plus 7 over x plus 8. Okay. We know our denominators match, so no matter what, we know our answer is going to be over x plus 7 times x plus 8. So all we have to do now is get our numerator. So you have x squared minus that entire second numerator, negative x squared plus 14x. Okay, so we know that's going to equal, we just have our x squared here, minus, if we distribute our negative 1, you have negative times negative is positive, so you end up with positive x squared there. Negative 1 times 14x is negative 14x. All over x plus 7 times x plus 8. Any questions on that step? All right. Okay, so now we can just combine those two. X squared plus x squared is 2x squared. There we go. Minus 14x over x plus 7, x plus 8. Okay, so we factor a 2x out of both of those. Okay, so we have 2x times x minus 7 over x plus 7 times x plus 8. Okay, so even though we factored it all the way down, this one doesn't have anything that will cancel out. So it doesn't always cancel, but a lot of times it does. All right. Any questions on that one? So this is your final answer. All right. Everybody's okay on this one? Okay. So leave that up. Make sure everyone's done. All right. Excuse me. Okay, so now we're going to start adding and subtracting rational expressions, this time with unlike denominators. Okay, so here your steps. To do that, your first step is you want to find the least common denominator for both. Okay, now your second step, you're going to match the denominators. Uh-oh, clean that up a little. To the least common denominator from step 1. Then you're just going to add or subtract your numerators. Over your common denominator. Okay, so let's say, for example, if you wanted to, let's see, get a good one here. Say if we wanted to add, let's say 2 over x minus 2 plus 10 over 2 minus x. That should look kind of familiar. Okay. Now with this one, we can change this first denominator to 2 minus x, or we can change the second one to x minus 2. It pretty much is up to you. Okay, so if we have 2 over x minus 2 plus 10 over 2 minus x, we just have to remember that 2 minus x is just equal to negative 1 times x minus 2. So bring that up a little bit. Okay, so we have 2 over x minus 2 plus 10 over 2 minus x. And remember, you have to multiply the numerator and denominator by that negative 1. So negative 1 over negative 1. Okay, so really, that negative 1 is going to be multiplied to both of those. So you go ahead and distribute that negative 1. You have 2 over x minus 2 plus 10. Remember, that's 10 times negative 1. Negative 1 times 2 minus x is just x minus 2. So you can kind of expand that one a little bit. Okay, so now we have our common denominator, because the goal all along is to get the denominators to match. Yep. Okay, so you have 2 over x minus 2. 10 times negative 1 is negative 10 over x minus 2, which is 2 plus negative 10, or you can put 2 minus 10, doesn't matter, over x minus 2, which is negative 8. Okay, and that will be your final answer for that one. So bring that up some. All right, so any questions on that one? Okay, so that was one of the quicker ones. Unfortunately, they get more complicated. Alright, so okay, so let's say, for example, we wanted to add, let's say, 9x over 7 plus 3x over 5. We'll start with the basic number denominators. Okay, so remember, your first step is to find your least common denominator. Okay, so your least common denominator is just another way of saying the smallest multiple of both 7 and 5. Okay, so we know 7 is just 7 and 1. And 5 is just 5 and 1. That's the most you can factor that one into. So you know, to find the least common denominator, you get each term and you multiply the smallest amount that it fits for each one. So you know 7 appears once. So and 5 appears once. So your least common denominator 7 times 5, which is 35. So I know most of you probably did that one already. Okay, so we know that our second step, if we have our 9x over 7 plus 3x over 5, we have to match those denominators to match our least common denominator. Okay. So we know to get 9x over 7, to make that 7 a 35, we've got to multiply it by 5. But anything we have to do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator. Clean that up a little bit. That didn't help. Plus, for 3x over 5, to turn that into 35, we have to multiply it by 7. But anything we do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator. Okay. So we actually end up with 9 times 5x. That looks like an S. Let me straighten that up a little bit. There we go. So we have 45x over 35 plus 21x over 35. Okay. So we have our common denominator. So we know whatever our answer is going to be, it's going to be something over 35. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Okay. So now we just add our numerator. So you have 45x plus 21x. Okay, which ends up being 66x over 35. And they don't have anything in common that will factor out, so that is your final answer. Okay, so any questions on that one? Okay. Sure, everyone's still right. Okay. Okay, so let's say for another example, if you wanted to add 6x over x squared minus 4 minus 3 over x plus 2. So clean that up. Excuse me. Okay, so the first thing you should notice is that this is a difference of squares. Okay, so we'll do all of our factoring over on the side. So x squared minus 4, you can rewrite that as x squared minus 2 squared, which is the difference of squares. So that becomes x plus 2 times x minus 2. Okay. So that means we can rewrite this as 6x over x plus 2 times x minus 2 minus 3 over x plus 2. Okay. So finding the least common denominator means that we have to somehow or another get these two to match. And I thought I had a different colored pen. There we go. Okay. So to get the denominators, match, multiply 1, well, in some cases, or both, by values to get the same factors. For each denominator. Okay, so that means if you have 6x over x plus 2x minus 2 minus 3 over x plus 2, then what would you have to multiply here to get those two denominators to match? Yep, x minus 2. Because you have an x plus 2 here times x minus 2. So to get these two to match, you just multiply this one by x minus 2. Because remember, your goal is to get these to match. Because remember, you can't add or subtract until they do. If they're different, you can't add or subtract them. But once you multiply this one by x minus 2, whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do the same thing to the numerator. So you have x minus 2 up there also. Okay. Any questions on that step? Okay. So we have our x minus 2, x plus 2, x minus 2, x plus 2 on both sides. We'll bring that up a little bit. Okay, so that gives us 6x over x plus 2 times x minus 2. Oh, bring that up some more. Minus 3 times x minus 2, because remember we multiplied both by the same thing, over x plus 2 times x minus 2. Okay. So now, since they're the same, we know our answer is just going to be something over x plus 2, x minus 2. Because our goal all along is to get those matching denominators. Okay, so now we just subtract 6x minus 3 times x minus 2. Well, didn't really need the extra set of parentheses here, but we can use them there. Okay, so that's going to equal your 6x. They're kind of in the way. There we go. Now we just distribute our negative 3. So negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. All over x plus 2 times x minus 2. Okay. Now you want to look and see if you can combine anything to make it a little bit easier. You can actually combine your numerator. So 6x minus 3x will give you 3x. So you have 3x plus 6 over x plus 2, x minus 2. Okay, and you want to notice that 3x plus 6, you can factor out a 3 and leave it as x plus 2. Okay, so you end up with 3 times x plus 2 over x plus 2 times x minus 2. Now now you have the x plus 2's that can cancel out. Okay, so that cancels out with that one. So you end up with 3 over x minus 2 as your final answer. Okay. Any questions on that one? I see too many confused looking faces for no questions. Okay, I'm assuming you understood it. You're just sleepy. So I'll write it off as sleepy. Okay, anyone still writing? Okay. All right, so let's say if we wanted to add 2 over 3t plus 5 over t plus 1. Okay. Now, whenever you have two completely different denominators like this, it's pretty easy to find the least common denominator because you just multiply them together. It's just 3t times t plus 1. Okay. With numbers, you have to go through and find the lowest number they have in common and everything else. When you have just rational expressions and this is all you have to deal with, you just multiply one to the other. Okay. You don't have to worry about matching anything up just yet because that comes in the next step. Okay. So we know that 2 over 3t plus 5 over t plus 1, your goal is to match your denominators. Okay. So 2 over 3t plus 5 over t plus 1. If we know this is our least common denominator, how do we turn this into 3t times t plus 1? Just multiply t times 1. And that's one good thing about this one is that all you have to do is multiply it by what's missing. If you have 3t here and you're missing the t plus 1, you just multiply it by t plus 1. Here you have the t plus 1, but you're missing the 3t, you just multiply it by 3t. So whatever's missing, you just multiply it. So let me move this over here. Okay, so this one, you want to multiply by t plus 1, but whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do it to the numerator also. Okay, and this one's missing the 3 times t, or 3t, so you just multiply it by 3t. But whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do it to the numerator. Okay, so now it matches the least common denominator. That step makes sense? All right. Okay, so now these match. Okay, so that gives us 2 times t plus 1. Over 3t times t plus 1.